Hey everyone, on February 4th, Wong Woods Disc Golf Course in Buda, Texas is hosting a fundraising tournament to help make that course permanent. That means adding permanent baskets and tee boxes and more. And Wong Woods is the official presenting sponsor of the Magic the Gathering unofficial audiobooks podcast, which you are listening to right now. And right now, you can actually see the progress being made on the course by joining the Facebook group of Wong Woods. That's W-O-N-G Way Woods. Also, if you can't make the tournament but would like to help out, or you play disc golf, you can purchase an official, custom-stamped Wong Woods mint disc for just $22, and it'll be shipped anywhere in the U.S. Plus, you could land an Unfinity full art land card with that. But that $22 will all go to helping the course get built and finalized. So again, if you are in Texas, you play disc golf, head to Buda on Saturday, February 4th, behind Buck's backyard for the Wong Woods fundraising disc golf tournament. The rest of you disc golfers, head to the Wong Woods Facebook page and get your disc today. You can find a link in the show notes, and you can see the discs on the Patreon or in our Discord. Wong Woods, where the river is imaginary, but the OB is not. Hey everyone, it's Phil Dawson, and this is the Magic the Gathering unofficial audiobooks podcast presented by Wong Woods Disc Golf Course in Buda, Texas. They're coming up on their fundraising event, as you heard, and I think they hit over 100 members on the Facebook page, but I wanted to thank Wong Woods again for being our first official sponsor. Next, remember, you can still get 10% off the Etsy shop for the custom Shadowbox cubes. Head to etsy.com/shop/apesandcapes. Use the code MAGIC on your checkout, and seriously, check out all the great pop culture Shadowbox cubes available. Add one to your collection. We also have set our goal of 30 patrons for the Patreons. We're currently at 22, so if you ever wanted to support this project now, as good a time as ever. You can start building up your support streak for when we start our loyalty rewards program, get cool stickers, gear, art, etc. It's all in the works, and your months can start adding up now. It costs less than $3 a chapter to join, so that's less than a booster pack a week. Come on. And we're closing in on a big trip back to America. All proceeds for the next 2 months going to help with our travel to see friends and family for the first time in 4 years. Have my daughter meet her grandparents for the first time. So like I said, now's a great time to join up, and I'd appreciate it if you would. And this is our last chapter for the month. I'm working on a special episode that will hopefully drop next week. And I want to remind you I'll be playing video games on Twitch for the next 2 weeks, as the game Smite has its Magic crossover event, and we'll be playing and enjoying. So give me a follow, twitch.tv/brickbravo. You can find me there, and hopefully we can chat, meet, play, have fun. All right, let's go. Chapter 14. Fire rained down in a burning cascade, washing over Urza's arm and scorching the golden finish on his staff as the Planeswalker failed to move in time. A flaming, gelatinous substance which stuck even to his form of energy seared into him at a dozen places now. Each wound drew off that much more of his strength, leaving him more vulnerable to the Negator's next attack. Urza's options were rapidly decreasing in direct proportion with the waning power left at his command. The Planeswalker had come back to Unfinity to see after the Bloodlines in this small nation. He hoped to mix the best results from here into a weak Ephemerith line, rejuvenating it. Through marriage and preconception treatments of the parents, with the eugenics matrix was preferred, the Walker was prepared for more drastic methods as necessary. With a few genetic samples from the local subjects, he could cut in appropriate traits and qualities post-conception. As a rule, he tried to avoid such procedures, but with the strange loss of the Bloodlines in Ephemerith, Urza lost one of his best. The people simply vanished, by all accounts just over 10 years ago, and only a few insane tales of the Night of Storms were left to offer any explanation. This was a matter of needs versus means. Dominaria's safety required it. Urza still couldn't be sure what had drawn him back to his old home in Unfinity, the remote cottage he once shared with Xantcha, now falling into ruin. In this place, the two of them worked on ways to defeat Phyrexian incursions into Dominaria, and later, with the help of a local boy, Radapi had finally won the battle against Gix. Nostalgia? Not likely. Maybe he came to remember Xantcha, whom he'd traveled with for so long. She would have understood the necessity of the Bloodlines, felt certain. The Phyrexian couldn't have simply been waiting for him. Either this location was checked often, and Urza had simply chosen the wrong time, or the Negators were getting better at tracking him without giving away their own presence. The Planeswalker preferred to believe the former, so he did. Now the cabin burned, having caught a spray from the Negator's fire-throwing weapon. Small trees sprouting up in the clearing area were also afire. A sooty smoke trailed the area, the gritty clouds having trouble escaping into the sky and beginning to wear on Urza's visibility. The large creature construct appeared to have little trouble tracking the Planeswalker. A long arm snaked past a blazing pine tree, the crackling flames of little bother to it, swiping at Urza's side and scoring bloody furrows from ribs to hip. Such an attack would rarely have shown blood, the manifestation of energy bleeding away from Urza's consciousness. But on top of the burning wounds, the walker was simply unable to regenerate the illusion after clawing. A large dark shape loomed through the hazy black cloud, standing twice as tall as Urza. Its incredibly bloated body expanded and contracted with an over-exaggerated breathing motion. One arm, nearly dragging to the ground, ended with a razored claw. The others looked stunted, but in actuality had been replaced by a type of slender cannon that spewed the dangerous substance. Urza swept back, avoiding a new stream of fiery gel and focusing mana into a lightning strike. A blue-white arc leapt from his fingers and smashed into the Negator's carapace of hard, glossy black skin. The energy danced over the outer form, all of it drawn over the Phyrexian's left hip, where it entered. The glossy carapace split down the outside of the left leg. Corrupted flesh sizzled and burned as the lightning was somehow channeled down into the ground and away from anything vital. This Negator was immune to natural fire and resistant to lightning. The two creatures Urza had found time to summon early on had met with fiery deaths, and now the walker was losing too much mental strength to tap any more mana. It was a hard realization for Urza Planeswalker to admit. He was losing this fight. When one understands the nature of a thing, one knows what it is capable of. A saying once passed to him and his brother, both from Tokasia, the old Argivian archaeologist who first taught the brothers about the recovery and restoration of artifacts. His attention was divided between an attempt to build his powers up and searching for the Phyrexian he had lost again among the thick, gritty smoke. It took Urza a moment to understand why he dredged up that old memory, then transposed it. Once a person understands the capabilities of a thing, he might also know its nature. The creature was disgorging an incredible amount of burning fluid, but even the Phyrexians could not violate the laws of conservation. That substance had to be stored or somehow produced by the Negator. The bloated body and its bellow-like breathing suggested a combination of both. As a planeswalker, Urza was capable of casting all colors of magic, but his first love, his initial rise to power, had been with artifice. He thumbed a stud on his staff's contoured grip. One of the crescent-shaped tines on the staff's head reversed itself on a clockwork gear, bringing a special edge to bear. Another switch triggered the harmonics that attacked the glistening oil. The walker had made adjustments to the sonic device after its failure with one Negator decades before, hoping for an improvement. This he received, but not much. The Phyrexian screeched in pain and anger, wading forward through fire and smoke to reach the hated device. The fire cannon tracked in, but a slight tremor in its musculature gave Urza all the edge he needed. The planeswalker swung his staff around, slicing the blades into the creature's shoulder joint, the one that held the slender cannon on the Negator. The blade, magically sharpened, cut through reinforced skin and metal supports. The cannon fell to one side, a gush of glistening oil and burning gel vomiting forth before the Negator's body clamped down on the wound. Still, the escaped gel burned into the Phyrexian's outer flesh, distracting it even more. Urza was already moving, circling about the Negator and trying nothing fancier than slicing at its bloated body. Now the Phyrexian suffered the same problem as Urza, deciding between the strength and attention necessary to deal with its physical wounds and how much to spend on the walker. It became a race to see who could strike first a fatal blow, a race the Phyrexian lost. Urza sliced long and deep across its wide back and then quickly swept back to avoid the unstoppable gush of gelatinous fluid. There was no staunching this wound, and once the substance was exposed to air, the Negator apparently lost the immunity it possessed that allowed it to store the material. It screeched in agony, high-pitched and actually painful to Urza's hearing as the gel continued to eat away at it. The planeswalker picked up the severed arm carefully and moved back from the conflagration. The scent of scorched oil and burnt meat followed him. He stood back and watched his old cottage burn. Rain slipped out of her usual work habit, donning instead a special garment she had designed for increased protection. A long jacket of blue cotton, thin pads had been sewn into its entirety, and specially woven steel threads reinforced the chest and abdomen area. It was a bit heavier than she preferred, but when dealing with Phyrexian artifice, it seemed better and to be safe than comfortable. Alani assisted, the academy tutor who had proven herself very adept in disassembly and evaluation. An added benefit, Alani was of a human tribe that shared the Hurloon Mountains with the Minotaurs. Powerfully built, she could be counted on to help move the large objects and test equipment. Also, in terms Raid had once heard Gatha employ, Alani knew how to take a hit. A Phyrexian device had blown up in her face a year ago, and she had walked away from it, though Baron's best healer, mages, spent a good week restoring her to full health. Again, this was just another precaution for dealing with Phyrexian machinery. "Only not quite machinery, this," Rain said softly, bending down to examine the cannon-like device, a weapon which, according to Urza, had once sprayed a fiery gelatinous substance that clung even to Urza's pure energy form and burned ceaselessly. What the Walker had not mentioned was its origin. Rain first assumed that it had either been taken from an artifact creature like the dragon engines, or was more of a handheld device. She swung her wrist-mounted lens over to peer at the destroyed mounting hardware. What could only be artificial fibers exuded from a steel coil and burrowed into a small blackened lump. She had wondered at this earlier until cutting into it and discovering it to be a slice of tissue similar to human muscle. This close, she also smelled the charred scent of the flesh. The fibers were bonded to the meat by a process she had never seen before. It was at once hideous and wondrous. Alani did not share Rain's latter sentiment. "What is it, then?" she asked. Rain squinted and readjusted her looking piece. "I would guess that it was once part of a Phyrexian negator." She felt at one of the fibers with a bared finger, cool and smooth to the touch. Flexible. Some kind of special metal alloy, maybe a metal-enhanced form of cloth? Who could tell? Urza must have removed it after a recent fight. These fibers are actually fixed to the muscle as if they were large nerve endings. I found 3 other cables with similar function, including the thick metal braid tube that had residue of this fire gel. She looked up at her assistant. "Do you think this creature could be biologically producing the burning gel?" "I think I'd rather not find out," Alani said with a look of disgust for the artifact. "You're saying that this was actually part of a living being? An artifice graft?" The Chancellor nodded. "Far beyond anything we're capable of here at the Academy." Rain had serious doubts saying so about Urza. Master artificer that he was, Urza almost certainly knew how it was done, but would he ever attempt to duplicate it? Would she herself, if she understood how it was accomplished? Her initial reaction said no, but then immediately her mind seized upon circumstances where such grafting might be desirable. It could be useful for a replacement of an arm lost to misfortune, or war as a treatment for a birth defect. There's such a small step from there to improving on the natural order. Improved eyesight, stronger heart, faster reflexes. Where would it end? She asked no one in particular, bending back to work. The magnifying glass brought her a level of detail she could only have guessed at without. Even so, the intricacy hinted that buried even deeper than she could see might have been found a 3rd level of complexity. It violates the laws of simplicity. At some point, the construction of this device should begin to get simpler as we deconstruct it, not more complex. Unless the Phyrexians are able to work on a scale we can't even observe, much less touch. In the back of her mind, she recalled the Thran tome and its suggestion of artifice and flesh blended on the cellular level. Excitement touched her voice, warmed her skin as she considered artifice on such a level of mastery. Urza never mentioned anything about this. I wonder if the Phyrexians are improving or just sending their better designs after him these days. Or both. "Are you feeling well?" Alani frowned her confusion and not a little shock. "The closer I study these creatures and their work, the more I see that Urza was right in his pursuit of anything which might destroy them. What I can't believe is that others haven't noticed this as well." She shook her head. "I swear you seem to be admiring them." Lost in her observations, Rain barely acknowledged the comment. "There is something to be said for the theory behind such accomplishments." Alani reached out and tapped the device, her finger thick and blurry under Rain's glass. "Would you like to see one of these grafted to your husband?" Rain recoiled at the question, the horror of such an idea hitting her like a slap. She realized then that earlier she had considered exactly that, shivering for a deathly cold touch caressing her back and scalp, Rain pressed such thoughts from her mind. Alani was right. This was nothing to be admired. No matter the potential for good, such artifice was only in the hands of those who used it in the birth of abominations and the support of evil desires. Improved eyesight and reflexes were nothing. Where would it end? She had wondered. The scent of the charred meat now suddenly stung at her sinuses and burned acrid in her throat. She swallowed dryly and removed the wrist-mounted magnifying glass as if it represented the same principle of augmentation. This type of procedure would create a never-ending process of replacement and refinement until... what? The word came to her at once, both appropriate and obscene in the same instant. Until complete. Timon had scheduled no meetings. He had, in fact, dismissed for the day those few students who left the academy to join him at the colony. He felt exhausted in that pleasant way which reminded someone of a full day's valuable effort. From the new well he helped dig to the students he hopefully enlightened on a few of the finer points of thaumaturgic studies, he needed a warm bath and perhaps some time for private reflection. He was looking forward to an early retirement for the day. Why, then, was there light on in his home? The sorcerer did not think to be worried. Nothing dangerous happened on Tolaria, not counting Urza's catastrophes, of course. He paused a moment, discovering the door to his home still locked. His mind still puzzled at this, and he turned the key in the lock and swung the door open. Someone waited within. The man's back was to the door, and he studied a shelf of books, all written by Timon. Timon saw only blonde hair trimmed at shoulder length and a coat of finely tailored leather. "Can I help you?" Timon asked, noticing the golden staff leaning nearby, its headpiece of joints, wires, and gears just as the figure turned. It was Tolaria's one recurring catastrophe. Urza Planeswalker. "Timon, it's good to see you again." The walker looked about the single-room home. He nodded approvingly. "You've done well here." Timon steeled himself against the false flattery, doubting Urza ever lived in such fashion. "It's simple," he said, of his surroundings and the colony both, "but it suits." He crossed his arms over a narrow chest. "Pales next to the academy, of course, but then we've had far less to work with in a way of material and resources." If Urza caught the reference to the island's slowly deteriorating state, the walker either did not care or was more concerned with other subjects. The two stared at each other for a silent moment before Timon reminded himself that Urza was not of true flesh, and so would win any staring contest. "What is it you need, Urza?" The walker looked nonplussed. "You act as if I've done something against you, Timon. I can read it in your posture, as well as your voice. Have I given you cause for anger or grief?" Timon unfolded his thin arms, relenting only a little. Pulling off his hat, the sorcerer tossed it over to his bed. "If you haven't, you're likely about to," he said, loosening the drawstrings on his cuffs for comfort. This apparently amused the planeswalker. "Sorcerer and soothsayer?" He smiled, his face lined and careworn as a middle-aged man. "Do you think you know why I am here?" Nodding, Timon moved over to his desk and leaned back against its edge. Urza, he noticed, had a way of wearing people down very quickly. He wondered how Baron stood up to it for all these centuries. "You're here to bring me and the others back into your program," he predicted. "Come to bring the strays home?" "I want your help. Yes," Urza said, shaking his head. He picked up his staff and laid it on the crook of one arm. "But I've never forced anyone to do work he hasn't wanted or at least agreed to do, ever, Timon. Remember, you never complained about serving under Gatha's instructions, and so long as you didn't, I needed you there." In Timon's view, Gatha had kept control of the younger man's life for those early years. The sorcerer never had the chance to complain. "You're saying I have the choice to refuse you or not?" Urza shrugged. "Of course." Timon almost said it then, refused without hearing the proposal to be rid of Urza Planeswalker. The colony was Timon's home now. It was a place where occasionally Tolarian students sought refuge when they could no longer reconcile conscience with the work being done at the academy. Some returned to the school, eventually, but others were often ready to take their place here. So long as Timon hosted this refuge, he wanted it kept clean of Urza's influence. "What do you want me to do?" the sorcerer asked. Urza accepted the invitation to speak with a simple nod. "I need more detailed processes for judging empathies, a person's connection to the land of Dominaria, and any predisposition toward other lands as well. Toward Phyrexia, Timon translated. He had no doubt that Urza could talk straight out about it, but was hedging for the sorcerer's benefit. Why not do it yourself? Urza spread his hands. No one is as adept to these magics as you are, Timon. You are a mage of the natural body, the near physical spirit. By inclination and more than 3 millennia of work, I am still primarily an artificer. Not even walking the plains changes you so much that you deny your basic nature. He lowered his arms. Nothing you develop can be used to change someone's nature, if that helps. But the Bloodlines project will continue, and the better my tools, the fewer my mistakes. Now that admission rattled Timon's belief, if slightly. Urza Planeswalker admitting to mistakes had to be a rare sight indeed. His cynical side argued that the Walker could afford to save such momentary admissions for just such occasions. Dealing with Urza reinforced Timon's admiration for Baron. Directly or indirectly, I would still rather not, Timon said, surprised that he did not say no at once. It felt more as if he was slowly talking himself out of it. Obviously, Urza's appeal on behalf of the Bloodline subjects had hit him hard. I've worked hard to help this colony survive on its own and make a small refuge here away from the madness of the Academy. I have no wish to disrupt the colony, Urza said. I wouldn't think to spoil your exemplary work here. I'm simply asking you. Indirectly, you help all the time, Timon. This refuge you've created gives students something we've never thought to include, a place to escape for a time and so come back with minds fresh and unburdened by too many years of pressured work. Also, there's your silence. Baron and I would trust you to leave Tolaria, but once away you could ruin the Bloodlines project by making it public. What local nations did not find out and interfere in, the Phyrexian sleepers would. He looked at Timon with frank interest. If you are so opposed, why haven't you done this? Timon couldn't help but wince at Urza's detailed evaluation of the sorcerer's work in life. Felt as if Urza had laid bare his mind and knew better than the sorcerer's reasons and motivations than Timon did himself. Truth be told, Timon knew that so long as he remained on Tolaria, he wasn't truly free of the Academy and its work. He was still a part of the pattern and likely forever would be. Had he been waiting all these years for someone to arrive and offer him a reason to come back? I'll do it, he said softly. On my own time and without anyone else's involvement. But I'll do it. He shuddered, knowing the nightmares he would open himself to because of this. I've often wondered, Urza, what my research would show me of your nature. Have you ever wanted to look into it? All the time, Timon, Urza nodded, slow and slightly sorrowful. All the time. Then, with a final tight smile, the Walker was gone. Timon cursed both Urza and himself for the necessity that had drawn him back into the Walker's plans. If his work could prevent the suffering of people in Dominaria, didn't he owe it to them to try? He sat behind his desk, leaning his lanky frame back in the padded chair as he stared up at the ceiling. Urza just might be right. That was the problem Timon faced any time the Walker came for assistance. If Urza was right, would Timon's years of inaction necessarily be proven wrong?